Welcome into the Kickoff, presented by Ram Trucks alongside Sam Ravech. I'm Treavor Scales, and I know nothing. Everything I said last week, just forget about it. It was null and void after week one actually occurred, but we did learn plenty.
Yeah.
When we get right to it, a host of matchups across the weekend. The message boards were already all kinds of lit, and I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah.
But if we could, just get right into the headlines that were, as far as the losses that occurred, especially in that top 10 range, beginning with Alabama. They traveled down to the Florida State Seminoles and get waxed, frankly. The score not quite as indicative of how dominant of an effort it was by Florida State. If we go boom or bust on the Crimson Tide, what you going?
Everyone's piling on Alabama. I'm just going to join the heap. Unfamiliar territory in Titletown. Tide start 0-1 in a season for the first time since 0-1. Nick Saban, head coach for the Tide, 209 games. Kalen DeBoer, 14 games. They both have the same amount of losses to unranked opponents at number 4. I don't know about you, Trev, but I don't know the last time that we have heard an Alabama team described as average and lethargic, because that's what they're being talked about right now.
I have zero familiarity with that concept, those adjectives being attached to a Crimson Tide team. And I'm going to side with you in the bust category for this Bama team because of how it just didn't hit the same, right? Quite literally, frankly.
Right.
That Kalen DeBoer-led team only rushed for 87 yards. A host of them on that opening drive. Beyond that, that is the lowest in a season opener for the Crimson Tide since 1975. Good news, Tide fans, you went 9-1 that season. Bad news is it just isn't going to be that same sort of cakewalk of a schedule, obviously. Everybody now has that sort of lack of fear that Tommy Castellanos exhibited going into this tilt, right? There's not the same aura, if you want to call it that. All kinds of things that felt like Bama before are things of the past, and I don't know what exactly you can do to get that right if you're Kalen DeBoer.
Right, and they got some injuries too, the Jay Miller thing. But I don't know that they're a Jay Miller away from winning that game. They got some other issues going on.
No question.
Speaking of issues, Texas had some issues going up to Columbus to take on the reigning national champs, Ohio State. Lost the game by a touchdown. Arch Manning first start on the road. Boom or bust on the Longhorns this year?
Okay, I'll go boom on the Longhorns, mainly because of what they have in front of them from a schedule standpoint. And beyond that, I think it does stand to reason to give Matt Patricia and that Ohio State defense a lot of credit for how many times they mixed up the looks for Arch Manning, made him uncomfortable. He never looked settled. It was happy feet every single time he dropped back and was trying to move it around that pocket. But again, 3 games you got coming up against San Jose State.
Yep.
I believe it's UTEP, and you got 3 cupcakes.
You do.
That is the gist of it,
Yeah.
that you can get Arch Manning right, and that sort of builds momentum for a cat that we have all come to assume has all the tools in the world to be great.
Yeah.
And I think this is the sort of first step in him having that reset in order to eventually come back.
I'm going to go boom with you, too. I'm with the patience thing. Texas's biggest problem, to me at least right now, is at the wide receiver position. Who's catching the ball? Arch Manning can't do it all himself. Last year, they had 9 receivers, including tight ends, that caught at least 5 passes. Only 2 of them are back. So, we got to figure out who's going to be the answer on the outside. So, but I'm a slight echo on the boom. That's really what I got.
I'm not mad at it. I think there are issues there that you have to address if you're Texas. I'm excited to see when Sarkisian feel comfortable getting in his play calling bag. We didn't see a lot of the motion, a lot of the quarterback run game that we're used to seeing from Sark, especially with a guy as talented as Arch. And so I'm waiting for that playbook to open up, and I'm excited to see what the Longhorns can do with that. Next squad that took an L, Clemson, at home. This is my national championship pick, Sam. So
you're not alone.
I'm not feeling great about how they did against LSU, so you got boom or bust here.
I'm going to boom, but I think both of these teams really looked the part on Saturday. LSU, I think, just might be national title good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Clemson's ceiling is, though. Huge props to Blake Baker in his second year of that LSU defense really getting that thing turned around.
100%.
But, Clemson has some real question marks, especially at the running back position. But I think in this new world of the 12-team playoff, I'm not going to discount Clemson
100%.
for losing to a much improved LSU team, but there are some questions there.
I better speak boom into existence, but it's looking real bust at times, right? It has that feeling of this team can use this game as either the ultimate motivator or just get downtrodden, akin to a Florida State last year where they got sort of in a tailspin courtesy of a tough loss out the gate. So I still have faith in Cade Klubnik. I know that wide receiver room is eventually going to get it turned around. They just ran into a few DBs out of LSU that apparently know how to lock cats down. The run game I thought was going to be a little bit more encouraging than it was. They have options back there, tailback. They got converted into Adam Randall, a guy that got converted into that running back quarterback position. Dabo was high on him. They thought they could replace the production of Phil Maffa, but it just wasn't doing. And so they've got the schedule in front of them in an ACC conference that is just waiting to be taken. Now they've got somebody like Florida State. Miami looked really good. There's going to be a lot more challengers in that conference, but I'm hoping that Clemson uses this as the ultimate turnaround.
The whole returning production thing only works if your returning production gets better, right? I mean, or else you're kind of
stay the same,
kind of spinning your wheels, doing the same results. All right, Notre Dame made it to the national title game last year and lost. They were on the road back, although were they? They go down to Miami and they lose 27-24. New quarterback C.J. Carr had his moments. Trev, boom or bust on Notre Dame?
I'm gonna say bust, but I want to use the nuanced lifeline here.
Okay.
I don't know that this is a national championship title team. Like I don't think that we saw even a hope of that, just because it feels like C.J. Carr is just a year away maybe in his development to sort of having the command over the offense. The other alarming thing, the fact that they only gave, 16 total carries between Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Prince. Like, I don't love that. Maybe it got lost in the sauce from an offensive play calling standpoint, but I feel like you can't go away from your horses that are there. And so for all those reasons and just sort of not having that continuity that chemistry that they need just yet, I'm going to say bust on the national title hopes for the Irish, but they'll still be a 10-win team.
I think Notre Dame had a chance to steal that game. I'm not sure that was a game that they really deserved to win. There's no shame in falling on a 50-yard field goal with a minute left after being down by 2 scores. So, look, the time is going to be there. Notre Dame's schedule is difficult compared to last year.
Sneaky, dog. At Texas A&M after the bye week, you got to FSU now, or excuse me, USC also looks like a freaking wagon by the time they'll see them later in the season. There's some teams, Boise State even, we'll get into how they got rolled, but nonetheless, that's still a pesky team that might mess around and give you hell. Like, there's a lot of stuff that could happen to Notre Dame that could prevent them from hitting that 10-win mark.
Yeah, no question. And point being, too, Notre Dame, their schedule last year, not even as good.
Little cupcake.
Little cupcake.
Anyways, look, it was a long weekend of college football, and we're thankful for that. Thursday through Monday, we had quite the set of highlights from you, and we used that term interestingly enough.
This is a low light.
I mean, I thought it was hilarious. Georgia State snatching chains pregame against Ole Miss. Now, his boy, looking at him saying, why? Why would you do that? You deliberately poking bears. Final score was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, a lot to a little.
First game for everyone, including the Duck for Oregon. We lost everyone loses their head sometimes. But Trev, look, that's what you're supposed to do. In the mascot costume, if you lose your head, you got to get out the joint real quick.
He was coached up. He followed his teaching to a T, and I can appreciate that, dog. It's dedication to the game to the highest order. College game day set, pregame kickoff, or excuse me, field goal attempt. Not only do you have Glenn Powell off there staring at you in his loving eyes, Peter's taking dumps on the field. You got to watch him plant foot, but he drills it.
Hey, my guy has kicked before, by the way. I'm not buying that.
He was locked in from the rip.
So game one for the Duck, game one for the equipment staff clearly as well for Georgia Tech. Punt returner Eric Rivers fields his punt, gets his jersey tugged, and the jersey just kept growing, I think, but it started as like an XXL, which is a real problem. Don't you want to be real tight with the jersey in football?
Okay, if it's a jersey number duplicate issue, give the other dude that jersey. Don't give your returner that. Anyways, Brian Kelly took quite the L. He might have been barking at the refs, and they might have gave him a little bit back on that sideline rep.
Man. BK just can't catch a break. I don't know what it is.
That's it. His get back code's nowhere to be found. He might be there scooping him up on the back end, but bro, I already got ran into the pavement. What we doing?
Last but certainly not least, this is just kind of how it went for Alabama. We got flags upside down. Alabama was in trouble from the jump with the flag upside down. Universal signed for distress. Tide, of course, went on to lose 31-17. As Dan Orlovsky put it, things just are not great in Tuscaloosa right now.
Alabama's problem is their controllables. You watch this defense run to the football and you're like, where is the effort to the ball, the angles to the ball, the tackling to the ball? It's not a talent issue. It's a controllables issue. And I think it is fair to say, can Kalen DeBoer survive September?
Time now for Unstoppable Performance presented by Ram Trucks. We're now joined by Heather Dinich, HD. Really appreciate you hopping on with us on the kickoff on this Labor Day afterward Tuesday. Unstoppable Performance this weekend, Tommy Castellanos for Florida State really ran over the Tide for Alabama. We just heard Dio talk about the state of affairs in Tuscaloosa. You were on the desk with him for Get Up yesterday. Are you with Dio in the fact that, like, the sky is falling in Tuscaloosa, or are you pumping the brakes a little bit?
I think the sky is falling. I would agree with that. And it's because of how Florida State beat them up front on both sides of the ball. I mean, that's a real issue. Florida State looked like the SEC team in that game. Alabama could be a 4 or a 5 loss team this year if they don't get it together. They've got one of the top 15 toughest schedules in the country.
The legend over at the Paul Feinbaum show said that they got ran over by the Gus Bus, and I unfortunately agree with him. But I digress because I do want to give some props to Florida State for their performance in that rushing game effort specifically. But how does that bode for not just Florida State and how good they could be in inserting themselves into the college football playoff conversation, but the ACC overall? How does that sort of open up the possibilities of how that conference can be perceived?
Well, that was not a fluke performance, and that leads me to believe, at least after a snapshot, that Florida State is capable of contending for the ACC. I mean, when you look at the athleticism, the toughness, the want to win, the talent on the field, it felt like they have all of the pieces in place. And oh, by the way, they don't leave the state for like a couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
They've got home field advantage going in their favor. So I think that this could really help the ACC if they keep this momentum going in terms of depth, because everyone talks about Clemson. Miami is certainly right there with that big win against Notre Dame. I would say they're the leader right now in the ACC. You've got SMU as well. This could be a deeper conference than a lot of people initially thought going into this season.
One of the best parts of having HD on our shows is we just pepper her with these crazy college football playoff scenarios.
All the hypotheticals.
So, HD, I got one for you. Tell me how crazy this is. 4 teams from the state of Florida getting in the college football playoff this year. Possible or no?
Absolutely possible. Look, if DJ Lagway stays healthy and they play to their capabilities, we could be talking about Florida. South Florida's win against Boise State in week 0 was real. That's significant for the group of 5 conference champion hopes. And then you got Florida State we're talking about, and Miami's win against Notre Dame was, to me, that was the first real playoff statement win under Coach Mario Cristobal. So I love these scenarios in week 1, guys. I love it. But I love that question too, because the Sunshine State has been down. Yeah. But if Florida is up, if Miami is up, and if Florida State turns the corner, and you've got South Florida in the G5 hunt, but South Florida plays Miami and Florida, so we'll learn a lot about them in the coming weeks.
I just love the concept of both Florida State and Miami both being good. We saw it on SVP SportsCenter last night. That hasn't happened. Those two teams haven't been 10-win programs since like 2001 or something absurd. It's been a while is the gist of it, that we've had powerhouses in the state of Florida, multiple in that. I want to get real quick your thoughts on, speaking of overreactions to week 1, Arch Manning. The idea of him and the performance that he had out the gate may have rattled some, but also should prove to be a lesson to not necessarily put everything into week 1, I imagine.
Well, it's also a lesson, overarching lesson, see what I did there, that just because your last name might be top level doesn't mean that you're going to win the football game. That goes for Bill Belichick at UNC as well. But the reality here with Arch is you've got a first-time starter on the road in front of 107,000 people, the defending national champs. I mean, he's gonna make some mistakes, right? The question about Arch was, where was the it factor? Where were the intangibles, right? 37% off target rate, I want to say, was the highest percentage for a Texas quarterback in a decade. He threw high, he threw low, sometimes he was behind his receivers, he seemed nervous at times. It just wasn't what you would expect from a Manning, but to be fair, it was an inconsistent performance you would expect from a first-time starting quarterback with any other name in that environment.
Another big result from the weekend, speaking of the ACC-SEC dynamic, Clemson and LSU. The loss for Clemson to LSU, how does that reshape for things for them in that ACC that we mentioned is trying to make some noise right about now?
Look, here's the reality of this whole first week picture, right? Clemson's going to be okay. Notre Dame is going to be okay. Texas is going to be okay. Alabama doesn't seem like it's going to be okay. Clemson has a lot going for it. I think they played below their capabilities. Cade Klubnik has to play better than he did, but you also have to give credit to LSU's defense for making them one-dimensional by taking that running game away for 4 quarters and then shutting them out in the second half. I mean, this was the missing piece for LSU. Clemson has to put it together. Their next, probably biggest chance to impress the selection committee might be against Florida State, but they also play another SEC team, rival South Carolina, in the regular season finale. And if they can get that kind of a win, that would help separate them for one of those at-large spots if they don't win the ACC.
Yeah, it seems like that South Carolina game. And look, we talk all the time, HC, about how the College Football Playoff Committee, they're humans, right? Like, I got to imagine seeing Clemson beat an SEC team has to mean something after being previously 0-4. They just can't really level up. Let's focus on the group of 5 before we get you out of here. We talked about the USF win over Boise State, but how does that open up things for the group of 5 and their hopes of getting to an at-large in the College Football Playoff this year?
Well, it starts with South Florida, but again, as I mentioned, they play Miami and Florida. Those are 2 real big chances for them. Boise State has no margin for error, but they play Notre Dame, too. It's kind of wild. Like, what if Boise State runs the table, wins the Mountain West Conference, and has a win against Notre Dame on the way? I don't see that happening if they play the way they played against South Florida. But you can't count out UNLV. They struggled a little bit in their season opener, but they did get a win. Let's not forget about Navy. Let's not forget about Tulane. Yeah. This is a fascinating race this year that could bring some other conferences into it, but I do think right now you got to stay focused on the Mountain West leaders and the leaders from the American Conference.
Only week 1, it's hard not to overreact to things, but it's always great to have Heather Dinich to bring us kind of back to the center here. Thanks, HD. Really appreciate it.
Got you guys. Thanks.
That TCU North Carolina game, the debut of one Bill Belichick went wayward for old Wild Bill. They got out the gate good, did the Tar Heels. Yeah. A nice little opening drive, put 7 up on the board, looked physical, it was all outdoors, and then it all went left for them. It
went down. 41 unanswered points. TCU put up in 44 straight minutes of game time. Yeah, this is after the first 3 minutes of this game, it was just all bad.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you learned a lot about Josh Hoover, the quarterback over there with the Horned Frogs that can absolutely spin it. You know that TCU defense can really put up some physical battles, and we found out that Sonny Dice felt a little slighted given the coverage heading into this week, that week matchup. It was interesting to watch all of this unfurl. It turns out that not even a 6-time Super Bowl champ can overcome the fact that 70 of his players got turned over in a single offseason. Welcome back. This is more of the Kickoff presented by Ram Trucks, and now we have the honor and pleasure of being joined by one Max Browne, one of the many voices over in our ACC football coverage. Max, straight up, what are we to make of this debut for Bill? Are we supposed to just tank it out the gate, or are we going to give him a little grace?
I think we're going to give him some grace. I mean, it was a head scratcher. You guys said it. The first drive, it was like, all right, this is going to be easy. All the hype for UNC was validated, and the Tar Heels forgot they had 4 more quarters of football to play. But to me, the biggest question with Bill Belichick or the biggest concern I had for him going into the season was how would his coaching style translate to coaching 18 to 22-year-olds, and would his message get received from those guys? And clearly after yesterday, the answer appears to be no. And I know for me in college, I had 5 head coaches, and after a loss, that's when coaches would crank up the energy. They'd have a hop to their step because they don't want kids feeling bad for themselves or, start reading the press clippings and start checking out. That's not Bill Belichick's DNA, so I'm fascinated to see how they respond after a loss, because the stoic nature, that might work in the NFL. I have concerns of whether or not that'll work with 18 to 22-year-old kids.
No question. Offensively, what did you make of Gio? I mean, look, this was a guy that has come up through the ranks, some turnover issues in his past. He came out really confident, but as the game went on, looks like there were some issues in the trenches. Offensive line didn't protect him great, but there were some turnover issues in this game. But what do you see from the QB1 for UNC last night?
Yeah, you could tell right away they were trying to establish the run. I believe 9 of the first 10 plays were run calls. The one pass in there did look clean from Gio Lopez. But I walk away I think there's a lot left to be desired. I mean, I'm not sure where exactly this passing game is. I don't really necessarily know where this receiver room's at. I do think you could tell that they were trying to establish the run to then ease up on the pass rush and help their offensive line and offensive tackles out. But Gio Lopez, we'll see where his health's at. That, to me, is a concern. But I do think a bright spot for Max Johnson to respond after a horrific leg injury. You would have never known that was the case, because that's not only a mental struggle for a backup quarterback to come in any game, but especially after having to rehab that injury. Credit Max Johnson for responding, and even if they have to go with Johnson at quarterback, I do think he's fully capable of being a starter in the ACC.
A tremendous story for Max Johnson. I don't want to take anything away from that whatsoever. I do think that Gio Lopez getting involved in said run game that you mentioned, Max, could be a key to unlocking that offense overall. But I want to go macro on the ACC at the very least. You had a couple of big wins, obviously not that result withstanding against TCU for the Tar Heels, but Miami over Notre Dame. Clemson hanging tough with LSU. Florida State obviously being the headliner. What are we to make of the ACC overall as far as their standing as they try to vie for more of a little bit more clout within this college football playoff discussion? Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I think I said this on the show last week. The second tier of the ACC is going to be fascinating, which now I'm putting Florida State in that second tier. If you got Clemson and Miami at the top, that second tier of Pitt, Louisville, Florida State, SMU, Georgia Tech. There's a whole crop of teams that are saying, hey, we can contend for an ACC title. And if they're contending for an ACC title, that means they're contending for a college football playoff berth. And with the SEC not necessarily looking strong after week one, if the ACC, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if they were to get 3 teams in, that means another conference ultimately is not getting a second or a 4th team in if you're the Big Ten or the SEC. So that second tier of the ACC could very much dictate really the entire scope of the CFP. It wouldn't surprise me if that's what we're talking about here in November.
Max, you're in a unique position here because your first start in college was against the 2016 Alabama defense, and Arch Manning made a pretty decent appearance against a really good Ohio State defense coached up by Matt Patricia. I'm not sure they're at the 2016 Alabama level, Max, but where does Arch stand now in the aftermath of his performance this weekend, you think?
Yeah, I'll go to the grave saying I had the toughest week one start of any quarterback back in the day. A lot of those guys are still playing in the NFL 9 years later.
Still ball.
But no, I thought Arch Manning played a bad game, but he's not a bad quarterback. And if people are selling their Arch Manning stock, give me a call because I'm buying. I think you could tell that was just a bad game for him. And the reason I know that is because of the way Sark was calling plays. I thought he was even more quarterback-oriented with his play calls than he was with Quinn Ewers behind center, which people might push back on that and say, well, maybe that's the problem, is you need to trust the run game and don't put the whole game in your quarterback's arm. But I thought actually my biggest concern with Arch Manning after week one was the mechanics and the footwork, which is beyond ironic because of his last name. But you look at those interceptions, you look at some of the throws that got away from him, his base is not matching up his upper body. He does this kind of whiplash thing on some of those throws that reminds me of a young Josh Allen in the NFL before he got right. That, to me, is, I'm sure, what Sark is hammering to Arch all week long in practice.
I also want to get into the mental sort of capabilities of one Arch Manning, because I remember you having a post on your social media that I always appreciated, Max, in the light bulb concept, in that it's not necessarily an epiphany a lot of times for QBs. It is the reps that sort of build up the confidence, and I'm wondering if that's the sort of dynamic that we can expect from Arch Manning over the course of a year when he has these 3 weeks, frankly, to go fine-tune some stuff. Ain't nobody going to be watching him against these lower tier teams, how he can build upon that.
Yeah, what you're alluding to is the worst quarterback coaching advice that I ever got, which I swear did not come from Sark, who was also one of my head coaches. But it was this coaching point of, hey, the light bulb's going to come on. The light bulb's going to come on. And you're sitting there waiting as a young quarterback of like, one day this light bulb's going to turn on and I'm going to be an NFL quarterback the very next day. That's just not reality. You got to take it step by step, rep by rep, day in and day out, which might sound easy. It's a different beast when you're a 5-star quarterback, expectations of the world on you. I think Arch is going to get there, though. Like, for that to be his first big-time start, I know it wasn't his first start in college, I wouldn't say he looked overwhelmed. I saw people say he looked lost. To me, that's more of Matt Patricia in that defense and Texas offense not getting off to an early start early on in that game. But it's not a byproduct of, you see a lot of quarterbacks that you can tell they don't know where to go with their eyes. They're not getting through their reads. That wasn't the story for Arch. So I remain optimistic about the Longhorns starting quarterback.
Real quick, Max, I went to Pepperdine. We didn't have football, but I was there the same time you were at USC. And I was at your Utah State game, which was right after the Alabama game. Nobody talks about that. I don't hear anybody talking about that. That was awesome. You were slinging it.
Love that. First touchdown in the Coliseum for me was to Juju Smith-Schuster, baby.
That's right.
There we
Let's
go.
go.
Utah State.
All right, before we let you go here, Max, a lot was made of the returning QBs, but we have some young cats come out and absolutely hoop in week one. I want to go through your list of impressive performances from cats that were just taking over the signal calling duties for some of these college football programs.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's really been a huge storyline all off season is these starters that are at top programs but have no experience. And the first guy is Ty Simpson that jumps out. Of all the four guys I'm going to talk about, he had the most responsibility put on his shoulders, in large part because the Florida State offense was rolling. So you get down 2 scores, and that playbook's got to be very much pass-oriented. A lot of people being critical of him. To me, he's not going to be the weak link of this Alabama offense. If Jalen Milroe is behind center, I still think this outcome happens because of it was just sluggish all around on both sides of the football. And then another guy, Bryce Underwood. He's a guy that we've been talking about really for the past couple years, Michigan starter. I was impressed. I think the hype is real. He was decisive, which is the biggest thing that sticks out for a true freshman quarterback. To get the ball out of your hands quickly in that atmosphere, again, with high pressure, he looked fully in command. The one thing that did stick out, all his messy pass plays happened on sprint outs, which usually coaches call those plays with young quarterbacks to make the reads easy and utilize your athleticism.
Right.
I don't think they need to do that. He can totally operate from the pocket. And then Julian Sayin at his rival, Ohio State, opposite of Ty Simpson. I think that playbook was very condensed, but he played clean. He did what they needed to do to win the game. The question I'll have the rest of this month is, does Julian Sayin look more like Kyle McCord that first year at Ohio State, or does he look more like C.J. Stroud where the playbook really opens up? That's a big difference. If Ohio State's going to repeat as national title as the national title winner, I think it needs to be more of the C.J. Stroud route. Right. And then C.J. Carr as well, Notre Dame signal caller. Loved his pocket mobility. Very much Riley Leonard-esque, even with that same number behind center. He had that one goofy intentional grounding in the fourth quarter, which obviously was a bad look. But the play right here you're seeing, I mean, that's all him. That's all C.J. Carr. The concern I have and the question that I have for Notre Dame is the rest of this month. That intermediate passing game was non-existent. They did not even attempt a pass 10 to 25 yards downfield the first 3 quarters. Why that matters is because when you're down and need your young quarterback to lead a 2-minute drive to win you the game, and you have had no intermediate passing game up until that point, that's hard to shift your identity. But luckily for C.J. Carr, he's got the best running back in the country sitting right next to him. I think Notre Dame unlocks Jeremiah Love moving forward, and I'm optimistic about all these guys.
I was looking for that boost from the run game to kind of help CJ settle in, but we got one more out of Cal. That young man, JKS, I'm still mastering the name. I will fully admit that, so give me some time. Give me about a week. But JKS really did start on a wonderful note for the Cal Bears out there.
Let's see if I can get it right. Jaren Seave. Kiave Sagapolatele. We'll get it. Next week, we'll get it.
Again.
That dude looks like a stud,
There's a grace
though.
period. Yeah.
The Southpaw release. Yeah, he's got a long career ahead of him. I feel like we're going to be talking about this guy for a very long time. He looks smooth, and the biggest thing that jumps out to me as a young quarterback, he's throwing guys open. He's allowing his receivers to make a play. Again, like Bryce Underwood, looks fully in command. You can tell they're giving him the keys to the car. Cal's a team that we do not talk about in the ACC. But one thing that's been consistent under Justin Wilcox, they always have a very good defense. The Achilles heel is they've had very limited passing game over the totality of Justin Wilcox's tenure. Fernando Mendoza was good last year. No question about that. But if you give Cal a quarterback, look out. They could sneak up on some people in the ACC.
Like you said, that second tier seems to be pretty monstrous out there in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Max Browne, appreciate you, big dog. Have a great call this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
not be the headliners of matchups this week, week 2, but still some interesting matchups in that you got number 12 Illinois taking on Duke in Durham, Sam.
Yeah, all I've heard all offseason how Illinois is going to be like the next Indiana. No shade to the great program of Western Illinois, who they got last week, but Duke's a little different beast. Darian Mensah, Tulane transfer at quarterback, he is the real deal. I thought that Baylor also might be the real deal before they lost to Auburn last week. They're looking to bounce back. They'll need to do so on the road against a very good SMU team with a lot of returners.
I'm not all the way out on Baylor, quite frankly. I thought they still kept up athletically with an Auburn team that may end up making some noise given how that run game popped off, but I digress. Back to Baylor and SMU. SMU with a quarterback that they're now completely sold on in Kevin Jennings after he had that rough start in the playoffs. He seems to be settled right on in, and that is another team in that second tier of the ACC that could really make some stuff happen. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on social media, but this is El Assico. Iowa and Iowa State. I said it. It is what it is. They're playing for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Noon Eastern. Should be a good battle, if nothing else.
Rules are different on the internet, Trev. Iowa State and Iowa. Yeah, the road team has won the last 5 of those. I like that to continue. First big test for the Gators coming up. USF headed to the Swamp. Bulls just took down a ranked Boise State team. We just talked to HD about that. 4:15 on the SEC Network.
USF ran through their face, too.
This
D-Lay Lagway's health is the big question. It's what Heather led with when it came to the question of 4 Florida teams being involved in the playoff. It is always going to be contingent upon that, so we'll see what the Florida Gators can do. But this is the one, right? Michigan, Oklahoma, game day going to be out there. And what Michigan showed in week 1 was really special, specifically at the quarterback position.
Yeah, Underwood, man, he looks good. This is going to be kind of, I think, the first time he's on the national scale, though, so we'll see how he does in this environment. It's going to be difficult. I love this matchup, too. These two teams are two of the winningest programs in the entire sport, right? I think they've only met like once or twice, maybe once before this in like 1976. So this is going to be awesome to see Bryce Underwood on the big time stage.
Hell of a start for him, but also Mateer over there in Oklahoma. Nothing to sneeze at either. That is a marquee matchup that you're going to be excited about here as we get you right on the kickoff presented by Ram Trucks. I am geeked up to see. This is the type of weekend, Sam, where you think nothing's going to happen, and then everything happens.
Hey, if you're not good enough, a loss will find you. That's what our great Reese Davis says. So be careful out there. Be careful out there, the upsets.
Just look alive, baby. Head on a swivel. As always, we appreciate you joining us here on the Kickoff presented by Ram Trucks. That is Sam Ravech. I'm Treavor Scales. We'll holla at you next time.